Welcome back to Observability Explained, Episode 4, where we finally take all those metrics you've been collecting and do something useful with them. This one's about dashboards and alerting, turning raw data into a screen you can actually read, and a phone call that wakes you up only when it truly matters. Grafana puts your metrics on the wall, and a well-tuned alert decides whether your night stays quiet. So let's start with the problem. You've done the hard work, logs, metrics, traces, all flowing into a database somewhere. But that data is essentially invisible. Nobody's running a PromQL query every 30 seconds to check if the site's still up. And at 3 a.m., you only find out something's broken when users start yelling. The fix is twofold. Draw it on a dashboard so a human can glance and know, and set alerts so a machine watches while you sleep. Dashboards for eyes, alerts for sleep. So here's the whole idea in one sentence. Dashboards turn your data into charts you can read at a glance, and alerts notify you automatically the moment something crosses a line. The mental model is pull versus push. You pull a dashboard up when you want to look, and an alert pushes itself at you when you'd rather not be looking. Same underlying data, same queries even, just two different ways of meeting you where you are. And that's where Grafana comes in. Grafana is the visualization layer. It sits on top of your data sources and draws them, but it doesn't store anything itself. It queries Prometheus for metrics, Loki for logs, Tempo for traces, plus pretty much any database or cloud you can name, and renders the results as panels you arrange into dashboards, one pane of glass over all your data. So what does one of those dashboards actually look like in practice? Across the top, you've got your single value panels, request rate, error rate, P95 latency, uptime, the numbers you glance at first to know if anything's on fire. Below them, time series and bar charts give you the shape of the system, how traffic's trending over the last 24 hours, and which endpoints are dragging their feet. One screen, and you already know whether to relax or start digging. Zoom in a level, and every dashboard is really just a grid of panels, and there are really only a handful of shapes you'll keep reaching for. Time series for the classic metric over time curve, stat or gauge when you just want one big number staring back at you, bar charts and heat maps for comparing or showing distribution, and tables or log panels when you need the raw rows in line. The important part, each panel runs its own query. PromQL, LogQL, whatever fits the data source, and quietly refreshes on a timer. You arrange them once, save, share, and suddenly the whole team is looking at the same picture. But once you've got panels, the next question is what to actually put on them. And there are two cheat sheets worth memorizing. For anything serving requests, use read rate, errors, and duration, how much traffic you're getting, how much of it is failing, and how slow it feels. For the resources underneath, CPU, disk, queues, switch to use, utilization, saturation, and errors. Same idea, different lens. Red tells you if users are hurting, Yos tells you why the machine is. Of course, dashboards only work when someone's actually looking at them, and nobody's watching at 3 in the morning. That's where alerts come in. An alert is really just three things stitched together. A condition, like error rate above 5%, a duration that holds it long enough to ignore brief blips, usually for 5 minutes clause, and a notification that decides who gets told and how. The machine watches the graphs so you don't have to. So let's trace what actually happens when an alert goes off. First, the rules condition flips true. Error rate starts climbing. If it stays true for that 4 duration, the alert officially fires. Then Alertmanager steps in to group similar alerts, dedupe the noise, and route the result to the right place, and you get a single notification in Slack, email, or a page. That grouping step is the unsung hero. When 500 servers fail at once, you want to be paged once, not 500 times. And that right place part deserves a closer look, because not every alert belongs in the same channel. A page or phone call is reserved for the truly critical stuff, the wake someone up at 3 a.m. incidents. Warnings that a team should triage within hours, those belong in Slack or Teams, where they're visible but not screaming. And the low urgency stuff, capacity trends, Weekly digests, that's email territory. Severity decides the channel, and routing by team makes sure each alert lands with whoever actually owns the fix. But getting routing right only matters if the alerts themselves are worth sending. And here's where most teams quietly sabotage themselves. The fastest way to ruin observability isn't too little data, it's too many alerts. When everything pages, including the noise, people stop trusting any of it. They mute the channel, and the one real incident slips right through. So the fix isn't more alerts, it's fewer, better ones. Alert on user pain, errors, slowness, things a human would actually complain about, not every internal metric that twitches. So what actually makes a good alert? 4 things. It's actionable. If it fires, a human has something to do. It's urgent, worth interrupting someone right now, not tomorrow morning. It's symptom-based, tied to real user pain, not some internal counter that drifted. And it has a run book, so whoever picks it up knows what to check and what to do next. The litmus test is brutally simple. If this pages me at 3 a.m., will I be glad it did? If the answer's no, it shouldn't page. With that bar in mind, let's clear up a few myths that trip people up. First, Grafana doesn't store your metrics, it just draws them. Prometheus, Loki, or Tempo hold the data. Grafana queries and renders. Second, more dashboards don't mean more insight. 20 dashboards nobody opens is just noise. A handful of well-chosen panels wins every time. And third, alerting on everything just in case is how you train your team to ignore the pager. Alert on symptoms that need action and nothing else. So how do you actually harden this in practice? On the do side, chart ready and use signals so every panel maps to either user-facing pain or resource saturation. Alert on symptoms with a for clause so brief blips don't wake anyone. Route by severity. Slack for warnings. Pager for the real fires. And always link a runbook so the responder isn't Googling at 3 a.m. What to avoid is basically the mirror image. Dashboards no one opens, alerts on raw CPU spikes, pages for things that can wait, and pretty charts that never lead to action. With those principles in mind, let's put names to the tools you'll actually see on the job. Grafana handles dashboards on top of pretty much any data source. Prometheus pulls metrics and evaluates alert rules. And Alertmanager takes those firing rules and routes, groups, and dedupes them so you don't get paged 12 times for the same outage. From there, it's a handoff. PagerDuty or OpsGenie for on-call rotations and escalation. Grafana OnCall if you want that open source. And Datadog if you'd rather buy the whole stack pre-assembled. So let's pull the threads together before we move on. Dashboards are how you see your data. Alerts are how the data finds you. And Grafana, remember, only visualizes what something else is storing. Chart the red method for your services, the US method for your resources. And when you write an alert, make sure it's actionable, urgent, and tied to a real symptom. Because at the end of the day, alert fatigue is what kills good on-call culture. Always aim for fewer alerts that actually matter. So let's zoom out and see where this episode actually sits in the bigger picture. The first 3 episodes gave you the raw signals, logs, metrics, and traces. Today we drew them for human eyes with Grafana, and we let a machine watch them for us with alerting. What's still missing is the question of what's actually worth alerting on in the first place, and that's exactly where SLOs come in next. If you want to keep going after this, the full observability. Explain Track walks the same path we've been on. Logs, metrics, traces, Prometheus, and now dashboards and alerting, with SLOs and error budgets coming up next. And if your real goal is surviving on-call, rather than just understanding it, there's a companion course focused on exactly that. Turning raw telemetry into something you can actually operate at 3 in the morning. Everything lives at Dargslan.com courses. Before we wrap, I've got a question for you. What's the worst 3 a.m. alert you've ever gotten? Maybe the one that dragged you out of bed for absolutely nothing, a flaky check, a threshold set too tight, or the opposite, the silent failure you really wish had paged you, but didn't. Drop it in the comments. Honestly, those stories are how the rest of us learn what to actually alert on. And that's a wrap on episode 4. You've got data on the wall and alerts that should only fire when they matter. But next time, we tackle the harder question, what does good enough actually mean? That's SLOs and Error Budgets, episode 5. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you over at dargslan.com. Thanks for watching.